This is Joe Robinson, and this video is going to be a video about thumb picks and thumb picking. I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of using a thumb pick versus playing with the bare flesh of your thumb. I'm going to talk about fingernails versus finger pads. We're going to talk about hybrid picking and how that may come into play. Hybrid picking, for anyone who doesn't know, is using a regular pick, like a flat pick, and the other fingers to play finger picking things. There's some pros and cons to all of these methods, and I feel I'm uniquely qualified to talk about thumb picking because it's what I do so much of the time. When I get on stage and play a solo concert, I would say 80% of my performing is with a thumb pick. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. Like and subscribe and do all those good things, and stay to the end where I describe the exact picks and the strings that I use. So let's go through the pros and cons of using a thumb pick to begin with. A thumb pick is just this plastic thing that goes on the end of my right hand thumb. It allows me to play with a little more clarity than just the flesh of my thumb. So that's a big pro, is the clarity. So if I was to play something like this, that's what it sounds like with the thumb pick. Pretty clear and articulate. If I was to play it with the bare flesh of the thumb, it sounds like this. Still sounds good, and that might be good for a particular song, but it doesn't have that same clarity. Of course, one of the pros with a thumb pick is you can use all the fingers on your right hand, and your thumb has its own voice. So the thumb actually has some increased separation from the fingers, which sound a little warmer, and the thumb sounds brighter. So what we're trying to do when we play fingerstyle so much of the time is create two separate voices. This is the kind of fingerstyle guitar that I love, where there's a clear melody and then there's a clear bass part or accompanying part. And so if I was to take that example, windy and warm, and play the bass, that's what the bass does. And then the melody comes in and is nice and clear and articulate. So we have that very distinct bass motive, and then you play the melody. Hear that separation? Play the same thing with the bare flesh of my thumb. It sounds a little more like one guitar player rather than two separate voices. And of course the bass notes are not as clear and not as articulate as opposed to The cons of using a thumb pick would be that it's quite awkward to flat pick with. So if you're going to be playing single lines like this, it's very difficult to flat pick with the same articulation that you can with a normal flat pick. As opposed to I'm kind of used to it, but if anyone out there has tried to play a flat pick and solo with a thumb pick, it's just difficult, and you just have to trust me when I say it's much easier with a regular flat pick. Another con with using a thumb pick is that it really takes some time to get used to. When you first put on a thumb pick, it's going to feel very awkward and you're going to feel like very clumsy and uncoordinated. It really does take some getting used to, but I really encourage you to take the time and get used to it. I have a finger picking course called Complete Fingerstyle Guitar that has a beginner, intermediate, and an advanced series of courses that I highly recommend you check out if you'd like to learn how to use a thumb pick and how to play fingerstyle in this method that I'm describing. I have had over 13,000 students go through that program now and just rave reviews. People love it. People connect with the step-by-step methodology, and I'm really proud of that course. So do check it out if you're interested in learning this style. The other con would be that it can sound very strident if not played with finesse. So if you strap on a thumb pick and you just start chomping away, it can sound very strident and just a bit overbearing, whereas if you play with the bare flesh of the thumb, sometimes it can sound more smooth, more clear, as opposed to okay? So let's talk about hybrid picking now. So hybrid picking is basically using a regular pick to play regular single notes with, but then you add the fingers. I'm pretty used to playing hybrid picking for a lot of my fingerstyle songs, but it's not as easy as I find it with a thumb pick. So let's talk about the pros of using hybrid picking. Well, the obvious pro will be that you can seamlessly go between flat picking and finger picking while just holding that normal pick. So it might sound something like this. A 1, 2, 3, 4. Something like that. You know, you can play a little bit of finger picking, play some flat picking. It's a great way to play rockabilly and kind of styles like that, I think. But here are the cons of hybrid picking. I think it just doesn't have the same feel, it doesn't have the same power, and you have one less finger than playing with a thumb pick. So if I was to play that same thing, same vibe, partly it's that I'm used to it, but it just has a different feel. It just has a different vibe, and the thumb chomping away, doing its own thing, just is more reminiscent of a stride piano than this guy. When you're playing with a regular pick, it just kind of sounds like one person rather than two people, I think. So that would be the big con. And of course, you have one less finger to use, so you got to kind of play with the middle ring and pinky if you want. Most people just play with the middle and ring finger when hybrid picking, and you can't do as many things as you can when you play with the thumb pick and those four fingers. So there you go. So let's talk about playing with the bare flesh of the thumb. So the bare thumb. I'm not talking about using a thumb now, I'm just talking about the bare thumb. Now it has a great warmth to the sound, which can be really nice for delicate songs. Another pro is you don't have to buy any picks. That's a big pro. And this is a cool pro to using the bare thumb. It kind of slows us down. So if you're someone like me who can be guilty of overplaying at times, if I'm in the studio and I'm working on a solo and I just can't quite break that habit of playing too much, I'll just put my picks away and try to play with just the bare thumb. And I'll usually play something real tasty and musical and something a little simpler, typically. Than I might if I was just blowing a solo with a pick. That would be the series of pros of using the bare thumb. The cons would be, as I mentioned earlier, it doesn't have the clarity or the punch or the articulation of a thumb pick. You can't play single lines quickly with a bare thumb, typically. Some people can. You listen to Wes Montgomery and he doesn't have any trouble getting around the fingerboard with the bare thumb. But generally speaking, it's just not as easy. And of course there are exceptions to the rule, like someone like Matteo Mancuso, who has unbelievable technique and unbelievable speed and clarity. I believe he uses fingernails. But for most of us, playing single lines with the bare thumb and fingers is not going to be as easy or articulate as if we had a pick. Let's talk about fingernails versus finger pads. So we'll start with fingernails. Let's talk about the pros and cons. The pros to fingernails, there's a clarity to the sound. And I don't play with fingernails, by the way. I'll play with the finger pads. But there is a clarity to the sound of using fingernails that is quite beautiful, especially on a nylon string guitar. Nails on a nylon string have just such a beautiful sound. The cons of using fingernails would be that it can sound very harsh on steel strings potentially. If you're not very careful, if you don't have a real finesse, then it can really sound harsh. And sometimes it sounds like nails on a chalkboard to me. It's also kind of high maintenance to have fingernails, and it looks a bit freaky, frankly. I've been told that it's a little bit off-putting to see someone walking around with these big long fingernails. If you don't know that they're a guitar player, of course. Finger pads. So I'm just talking about playing with the pads of the fingers, which is what I do when I play fingerstyle. Whether I play with a thumb pick or whether I'm using the bare flesh of my thumb, the pads of my fingers are what I'm using. They have a warmness and a bluesiness to the sound that I really like. They're low maintenance. You don't need to do anything but keep them short, trim them every now and again. The cons would be that they're not quite as articulate as nails, and they can make tiny squeaking sounds when recording sometimes, like just kind of, if I move my finger there on the right hand, it can create some squeaks, which bothers me a little bit, but it's not that big a deal once you get used to it. And the other con will be they don't project quite as well as fingernails. Especially on nylon strings, you would suffer some loss of volume. On steel strings, you would as well, but I feel like it's more pronounced on a nylon string. So I hope those pros and cons have been interesting to you. I know there's a lot of guitar players who are interested in this. A lot of people ask me why I play with a thumb pick so much. I also play with a flat pick a lot of the time. So generally, I'm using a thumb pick if I'm playing a solo piece that has I want a bit of oomph in the sound. If I want a warmer, more delicate sound, I'll use the bare flesh of my right hand thumb. I'm always using the pads of my fingers. I'm not using fingernails, and I often use a flat pick when I'm playing single lines. If I'm playing electric guitar with other people, then I'll often use the flat pick. Okay, what kind of picks do I use? So I use the Dunlop medium thumb pick. That's my pick of choice. It fits my thumb perfectly. I feel like these picks sound really good, and believe me, not all thumb picks sound as good as one another. I think the Dunlops sound really good. Some picks have a thinner constitution, and often that results in a thinner sound, if you ask me. So I recommend going to your local music store if you're interested in trying to use a thumb pick. Going to your local music store and asking them what kind of thumb pick selection they have, and trying all the ones they have to see if you can find one that fits your thumb just right, because you want it to be tight enough so that it doesn't fly across the room and fall off, but you want it to be not so tight that it turns your thumb purple or blue. I happen to like the Golden Gate thumb picks as well, but they're just a little bit too tight for my thumb. The Dunlop picks come in a small, medium, and large. The small just seems too small for just about anybody. The mediums are perfect for me, and that is the general recommendation I have for most people as a starting place. But the Dunlop large picks are great for people who have larger thumbs. For flat picks, I use this Blue Chip TAD60 when I'm playing acoustic. It sounds like this. And for electric, I use this Dunlop Jazz 3, which sounds a bit different. It sounds like this. So once more, the Blue Chip, the Dunlop. You might think that sounds exactly the same, but to me the Blue Chip has a brighter, more articulate sound, which is really nice for acoustic guitar. It also has more volume. It's very thick. These picks are very expensive. They cost like $35 or $40, something like that. I have 2 of them and I haven't lost one yet, and it's been about 3 years, so there you go. The Dunlop Jazz 3s are a teardrop shape, and many people like Eric Johnson use these picks. They're very fast and they're very articulate. But they don't sound quite as sweet on an acoustic guitar, if you ask me, but they're my main electric pick. So that's really what I use. The Dunlop medium thumb pick, the Dunlop Jazz 3 for electric guitar flat picking, and the Blue Chip TAD60 for acoustic flat picking. And I should say I got turned on to the Blue Chip TAD60 by my friend Trey Hensley, who is a great flat picking guitarist. And the bluegrass players particularly seem to favor these Blue Chip picks because they sound very much like a tortoise shell pick. I used to have a tortoise shell pick, which I think is illegal. I think they're illegal these days, but I used to have one and I lost it somewhere, and I still regret it because it sounded quite incredible. I hope you enjoyed this video. I do have a free list of all the gear I use that you can check out if you're interested. If you want to know all the nitty gritty on the cameras, on the microphones, on the guitars, on the amps, on the pedals, on the preamps, compressors, all these things that I use in the studio as well as live, you can download that below. It's a comprehensive list. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe as always. Take good care. See you next time. Bye-bye.